If you're going to do poor man's fiberglass, I think you should take a look at how I did it here. I'm going to be applying the canvas material, and I'm using Type Bond 2. So this process is actually known as poor man's fiberglass. There's a lot of different ways that I've seen people use poor man's fiberglass. The most popular one seems getting like mixing the glue with water, diluting it. I think that's definitely a viable option as far as ease of use because doing it this way definitely took some time and the glue has a hard time spreading. It's so thick. But I don't know. It seemed like it would have a better mechanical bond to me by having just pure glue rather than diluted version of it. I made sure I was really careful with smoothing out the canvas. I ironed it first and then I smoothed it out as I was applying the canvas and the glue. I made sure to put plenty of glue in the corners and then be really meticulous about pushing down those corners. Um, it's easy to kind of overdo it to where the glue pushes through, but I don't think that's a big deal, honestly. After the glue dried for a good few hours, I went back over everything with another layer of glue. Again, there's other versions of Poor Man's Fiberglass where they use watered down paint. That just doesn't seem like the best option to me. Like, if you're going to use paint that essentially is watered down, you're already kind of screwing up the integrity of the paint itself. So here I'm completely saturating the canvas in glue. After you can put as many layers of paint on it as you want, but relying on paint for waterproofing doesn't seem like a smart idea to me. I'm sure it works all right, but I just don't see it working for a while or for a long time, having that retainability, especially if you keep your camper outside. Making the doors was a little tedious, and I used this other version of the, what do you call it, the canvas material. It wasn't the best, in my opinion. I'll link in the description the one I liked the most. The cheaper one had a big seam in the middle, so it was, I think, 10 by 40, and the 40-foot direction was actually just sewn together to the other canvas. So there was a big seam. If you're going to do like a really long span, it wouldn't work. I mean, it would work, but it would have a thick seam in the middle of it. I decided to use a primer paint first. I felt that the final coat paint that I was going to use it had a primer built in, but I didn't want to absolutely use all of the paint with just, one or two passes. So I wanted to make sure that, if you're painting drywall, for example, the first layer needs to be primer, or else you're going to use a ton more paint. And usually the final coat paint is much more expensive than just a cheap primer. If I was going to do it again, I would like to say that I'd use a sprayer. I have a few sprayers, but to be honest with you, taping off everything and putting down plastic and everything would be just kind of a pain. It's obviously much quicker to do it that way, but yeah, obviously I chose to just roll it on. I decided to do Bondo on the back here because there was a few seams where the canvas had to be cut and trimmed, and I didn't think the seams would look good through the paint and everything. I'm not really great with Bondo, and I'm a bit impatient, so sanding multiple layers down, recoating, sanding multiple layers, it just gets too redundant. So I figured if the front, top, and back were already going to be poor man's fiberglass and a little bumpy texture, I didn't need a perfectly smooth Bondo texture. I wanted to point out something specific here. If you're going to use Bondo on something like this, and the Bondo only has so much working time, meaning once you add the hardener, it's going to dry up or harden pretty quickly. If you start to use it
when it's kind of getting clumpy and dry, you're going to try to press really hard. You're going to think, oh, maybe it's going to be okay. I mean, it's going to dry fine, I guess, right? But you're going to get these little pits. And you're going to have to go over it again anyways with more Bondo. So you might as well, when it starts getting clumpy, just stop and reset. Because you can see when it started happening, start getting these little pits. But before that, nothing. And you can see again another time, because I did 2 coats. So it's the little things, saves you in the end, rather than sanding and refinishing and sanding and refinishing.
I went with this forest green color for the paint. The first layer you can tell here is actually very thin, so um, getting a few more coats on it is necessary. Just try to sand out the biggest parts of the ridges in the Bondo. Not trying to get it too exact here.
So here's the 4th coat, I believe. So pretty much as far as I'm gonna take it to paint, there's a few pits I wasn't able to really get out, and I ran out of Bondo, so I kind of just went with it, unfortunately. But I'll say I'll link it in the description, but there's 2 different types of canvas I used. This canvas I used on the roof was nicer than the one I used on the doors, unfortunately. I guess live and learn, but you know, there's a few little specks here and there that aren't perfect, unfortunately. But I just ordered everything for the interior to wire it up and have the light switches and the lights, and I already have the side paneling and stuff ready. And then I can put the side panels on, the aluminum sheets, which are right here. So slowly but surely